Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Marco. I'm a former professional opera singer, and I love talking about video game music from an emotional perspective after a decade on the stage. Today, we're checking out more Hollow Knight Silksong. We're taking a look at Bellhart, which was one of 3 or so pieces that I was told to listen to before listening to it in context. So this is not, this is a reaction from playing the music before playing the game. I really like doing this because I feel like it gives me a clearer picture of what my mind sees, and it allows me to better interpret the instruments. I find it way more fun to then take the music out of context and listen to it in context because it's almost like connecting dots. It's really, really fun for me. So nothing I say here is to be taken like accurately. If I do happen to guess things accurately, well, I guess that's just, 14 plus years of doing the thing. So anyway, let's check out Bellhart today. Bellhart from Hollow Knight Silksong by Christopher Larkin. This mallet instrument, let me just restart for the sake of it. It's interesting. That sound over top, it sounds like, I don't know, that is a mallet instrument. That sounds like almost like hitting, maybe it is a xylophone? Well, in any case, it doesn't really matter what the instrument is, but what I find really interesting about that sound, coupled with that sad piano chord that comes in, it's got kind of a morose quality to it, right? Over top, that feels like a discovery, right? That feels like, you know what I mean? There's almost like a whisper, a musical whisper of like, suddenly there's like an understanding of something that we didn't understand before. Suddenly there's this moment of like, wait, what do you mean? There's a question in that upper register note. Which is really interesting. And the piano is quite somber as well. Seeing those strings come in, kind of. You hear this gradual buildup. It's really interesting. So what we're doing there, I don't think we're doing chords on the piano. We're doing 2 notes. So we're playing either like a third, dum, 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 dum. So what we're doing is we're actually doubling, not doubling, but we're essentially, well, we're doubling the emphasis, right? Because if it was just one note, bum, bum, beam, bum, bum, okay. But when we add a second finger, when we do or start doing, triad chord, or like we're trying to do like simple chords, thirds usually or whatever. This sounds like thirds to me. It could also be open fifths. When we do this, what it does is it produces a sound of hollowness. Okay, Hollow Knight, because we don't have a full chord, unless I'm mistaken. But by having that openness, we actually have a sense of space in that. And it does really have a more hollow tone to it, which I find kind of interesting. But we're actually swelling. Oh. Ooh, what a good example. This is a prime example of doubling. When the cello comes in, listen to how... You hear it? So the piano is actually within the same register. The piano and the cello are doing the same movement, and over top we have that rhythm that's constantly going. It's almost like the rhythm of the whatever instrument up at the very top. That instrument is sustaining us within the rhythm, and so we're actually grounded by movement in the upper register. So we have this mix of static with the legato playing of the cello and the piano, coupled with the rhythmic movement above us of the bell sounds. And so it's very somber, and yet it feels like homey and comfortable at the same time, right? And so it's almost like it's a place that's been broken, and yet people are still choosing to show up and live and figure it out. you know? And I think that's so cool because we actually can hear that sort of descent down in the music, you know? And moreover, it's just a repeated pattern. Da dee da dee da dee da dee da da da. So repeated patterns like this are really interesting because melodically speaking, that is going to implant itself into you. This is the inherent power of melody. The fact that I can immediately sing back what I just heard is a testament to how important melody is to entrancing us, enrapturing us, and locking us into the storytelling of an environment, right? And I love that about music because melodic writing to me is really important. I think melodic writing is the bedrock of good musical storytelling. There's nothing wrong with ambient music, and we do get quite a bit of that in Hollow Knight. However, we also get City of Tears. And City of Tears is one of those things where you listen to it a couple times, you understand it intrinsically. Every time it comes back with some sort of a variation, or it repeats with a different sound print, you know that that's City of Tears, right, from the original Hollow Knight. Or take whatever, Zelda, Mario, whatever. Melodies, not to be confused with melodic writing, which is a different, I mean, all of this is a melody, but the difference is that one of them is catchy and the other one exists, right? Melodies are so vitally important to terrific music writing, in my opinion. And I love hearing this sort of almost, I hesitate to say it sounds like tears. It just sounds broken with the desire to pick itself back up. Da, dee, da, dee, da, dee. You know what I mean? Especially when we're descending from the top, going down, sadness pointing downward, you know, enthusiasm, excitement pointing upward. Really interesting. We shift it into the upper register. Listen to it's interesting, the bedrock actually shifts into the lower cellos there. Or maybe it's the bass at that point. I don't know, I think it's the lower cello. It's a lower cello at the lower range. What we end up getting is this bedrock of doubling again. So doubling can also mean rhythmic movement, not necessarily the same notes, right? So the rhythmic movement of the cello is really interesting because that's that buoying sensation. We get this a lot. I mean, sometimes I feel like I repeat myself because these are some like classic tropes in writing in general, but I've heard this now in countless pieces of music where the bedrock is usually the lower bass notes. And that's like basic polyphonic, you know, multi-voice writing, is the idea of the bass 1-5-1, or that's not actually 1-5-1, but like, you know, the chord progressions, you know, need all the voices, well, at least three voices in order to move together, in order to be, you know, created on a staff and so on. I don't want to get too in the weeds about it because it's more complicated than what I'm saying, but the bass really boosts and supports that, which is terrific. Wow, lovely, lovely. Listen to that harmony there with the unison. Ta di ta sha. And then we fade out with how we started. It's bookended by the chimes. Isn't that lovely? I mean, what a broken, sad... It actually, in some ways, not to directly compare it to its predecessor, but I'm about to. I actually think that in some ways this is more musically complex than, let's say, Dirtmouth. This really has, especially with the way that the twinkling has, it's almost like seeing a city of gold or a city of what used to be gold, right? Because there's this natural sadness in it because of this descent down. It's really, really something. I quite like that, how atmospheric that piece was while still retaining a core melody rather than just going and defaulting towards ambiance. Really, really nice. Definitely stay tuned for more. I'm probably going to end up going through all of the Hollow Knight Silksong soundtracks, but I'm really curious to hear how much of what I say is accurate and how much of my interpretations of the music are accurate. It's one of my favorite things. So yeah, thanks a ton, and I hope to see you on the next one. Bye.